Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you are doing well. Today is Monday, October 21st, and Bitcoin is right around 67,000. We did get a pullback today in Bitcoin and some of the other names that have been running very strongly as of late. The Dow Jones is down less than 1 percentage point. NASDAQ is down 22 or 0.22 percent. The S&P is down 0.42%. Russell 2000 is down 1.5%. Now, the Russell will move kind of like the underlying stocks that the Russell represents. It will move stronger in either direction, up or down. And the dollar index is up 0.5 percentage point today. The big news story here. Assalamu alaikum, Rashad. Nice to see you. Thanks for the like. The VIX is up 5 percentage points today. And I really think the last hurdle here for the market to take off into this end of year rally, which I am anticipating strongly because of three things. Typically, you have a post-election rally in the market, you have an end-of-year rally, and then you also have the easing monetary conditions. And so maybe one or two additional rate cuts by the end of the year. So I do think that we end this year strong. Wa alaikum salam, Azad. Nice to see you. But we are waiting for that Israeli strike on Iran, which all indications seem to suggest that it is a matter of when, not if. And so that remains the major hurdle that the market is waiting for in the near term to get through, and then have some clarity on, what's that going to mean? Is it going to really develop into a longer conflict, into a more a serious thing that affects the price of oil over, a longer time horizon, perhaps affects world trade in some way? That's what the market needs answers for, and perhaps why the VIX is up. We did get a intelligence leak. Perhaps it was a leak. Over the weekend, and we'll talk about that in a second. Tesla is down today, 1.2 percentage points. We are anticipating their earnings this week, October 23rd, as is Enphase. Enphase is down 2.44%. They also report October 23rd. Be very interesting to see how these companies, or what these companies report. I think that Enphase now under 90 is really looking attractive. I'll give you my thoughts on that company towards the end of this live. We did see continued strength in Oklo. We talked about that company last week. This is the modular reactor company, modular nuclear reactor company that saw some support on the heels of agreements by Amazon and Google to invest in that space. Now, I do think that today it's perhaps being lifted another 12 percentage points by the short squeeze that this stock is experiencing. Again, it's going to experience sharper moves upward and downwards because of how heavily shorted this name is, as is ASML, another I'm sorry, not ASML, SMR, which is another modular reactor company. Today, it's actually down less than 1 percentage point. If we look at some of the other names that we're following here, PLL is down 11% today. It's getting close to where I would consider buying again. For those who follow our PIF portfolios, they know we took profits from this name on its recent jump. It reached close to 15, and alhamdulillah, we did take profits while we were appreciating in this name, and now we have an opportunity to get back into it, but I'm holding off for now. But we are getting to prices which make it quite attractive. HIMS is up another 2.5%. This has been a monster for us in terms of return. And I think that it has more to go. This is one of those companies where I think could really, 5 to 10x for us. So good news there. And I also think that today it may be bucking the herd here in terms of its price movement because of how heavily this stock is shorted as well. So a lot of the heavily shorted stocks are doing well today, bucking the trend of the general market, which seems to be down. As we mentioned, Bitcoin is at 67,000. We got up to 69,000 over the weekend. Doge is at 14 cents, and Solana had a pretty strong weekend as well. We're at 164. So, looking at some of the other macro influences on the market, does seem like Donald Trump is pulling away here after the sort of neck and neck race it has been earlier this month. The percentages or the likelihood of each candidate winning really diverged strongly and continue to diverge and continue to move in the direction of Trump gaining wider and wider margin over Kamala. Now, I do think that, or Kamala, I still don't know how to say it. So I do think that it's not over until it's over, but all indications and certainly the money seems to be betting on Donald Trump winning as opposed to Kamala Harris. Now, the intelligence leak, which perhaps may not be a leak if it was intentional and a way for the United States to express its dissatisfaction with Israel, not really falling in line with what the current administration wants. They do show that Israel's is planning to attack. It's making movements that suggest that it's going to be a rather strong attack against Iran. And so, perhaps the market is reacting somewhat to this news. I personally had no doubt that Israel was going to retaliate against Iran, and it was basically waiting for. Now, I read today that they were asking for another battery of THAAD missiles protect um, to protect Israel from potential Iranian ballistic missiles. Like I said initially, when Iran attacked Israel, that this was going to act as a vaccine. You're just showing your cards. You're telling the opponent, what they need to plan for, what they need to guard against, and that's exactly what Israel is doing. So after the vaccination that it received from the empty ballistic missiles that Iran sent its way, it is preparing its defenses accordingly. And once these defenses are in place, I think the attack will happen, and it's just a matter of when, not if. Now, in the meantime, Bitcoin continues to show bullish momentum despite this anticipation of a major geopolitical conflict. So, if we take a step back and look at the inflows into the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, these inflows have been the third biggest in 2024 and the fastest growing ETF ever. If you look at the amount of inflows, they're basically in third place behind just the ETFs tracking the S&P and the Russell 2000. So, I mean, this is a big statement. And that's just into the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. So, to say that these ETFs were a success is really an understatement. And I think there's a lot more to come from that. As I showed you guys, I think in the live on Friday, it took basically 20 plus years for gold ETFs to gain around 50 billion in assets under management and Bitcoin ETFs are already exceeding 20 billion in assets under management, and they've only been live for 10 months, almost 10 months. So um, yeah, the Bitcoin price is bound to go up a lot more than it already has. That's in my assessment, at least. If we look at the MVRV score, so since we have had a run up, it's, I think, important to look at these indicators to see, are we at the top? Are we nearing the top? Should we get nervous? Should we start selling? The MVRV score is still relatively low compared to where it has topped in previous cycles. So typically it reaches close to 7 or 8, sometimes even 9 in earlier cycles when the price of Bitcoin reaches the top. And now we're at 2. So there's a lot of room to run. This is what compares the market value to the realized value, or what people paid for their Bitcoin. We're still only at 2, and therefore there's not enough incentive for holders. At least if we look historically, there's not enough incentive for holders to cause a major dip here. Now we could get a sharp dip after the Israeli attack on Iran, but I do think that will be short-lived. If we look at the Bitcoin stock to flow model, I mean, we are still way below where this model suggests the price of Bitcoin should be. I mean, um, at around this time, according to this model, we should be closer to, at least if at least 100,000, north of 100,000, if you want to use this sort of plateau in price that this model suggests Bitcoin reaches. We should at least be north of 100,000. And if we look historically, the actual price of Bitcoin has not really deviated as much as it has in recent history from the price suggested by this model. And so the model has a really strong history to it that suggests that we are not overpriced here, not by any stretch. If you look at the stock to income model, that also takes into account the fees that are generated on the Bitcoin network and what that means for the supply of Bitcoin. Um, so this model is suggesting, we should be closer to 80,000 on the price of Bitcoin. We're now just under 70, as I mentioned. But this model is also suggesting underpricing here. So I really think that once we get over this hurdle, inshallah, for the Israeli attack on Iran, and I hope no innocents are affected, but I'm sure there will be. But once we get through this news event, I think there'll be a stronger push higher for risk assets in general. Now let's talk about Enphase. This is a company that I did have at one period of time in the past, but I ended up selling because its debt burden became such that it no longer passed my halal criteria for investing. And and subhanAllah, I mean, turned out really well selling it when I did. It's now trading for less than $90 a share. I still think the company is a really good company. I really like their product. Certainly the reviews that their product gets in terms of their net promoter score, it's very high and suggests a high quality product. They have good margins. They have a good management. Right now, and I'll show you in a second, their valuation seems, rather reasonable. And so I'll be listening in intently to their earnings report to see, number one, if they still run in violation of my halal criteria, and number two, if what their projections for the future will be. And maybe it is time to pick up a few shares here if the results are positive of that assessment. So if you look at their cash flow here, so it's trading at a market cap of 12 billion. It does have around 2 billion in, or well, 1.65 billion in cash. So let's assume it's 11 billion in terms of market cap minus cash. Now, if you look at the free cash flow here, 116 million, it generated 100 and let's say 125 million from operations. So cash flow positive here. And if we annualize that, this is quarterly, by the way. So if we annualize that, we're talking about around 500 million in cash generated in an environment which is considered, sort of the trough of their cycle. So I think, at this valuation now, if you look at the PEG ratio for this company, it's currently at a PEG of around one, and as you know, a PEG of around one or below one is really the ideal level for investing in growth stocks. And so PEG of around one seems fairly valued. If you look historically, typically the PEG ratio has been above one, and comparatively speaking, we're at a relatively cheap time here for Enphase stock. And I haven't really seen anything that suggests a secular, shift in either demand for their microinverters or the industry in general. Obviously, they're hurting because of the higher interest rate environment, but we should be entering the later stages of that and the early stages of a lower interest rate environment. So I do think that this will turn around. If you look at the PEG ratios, as I mentioned in previous quarters, higher than one. But now we get an opportunity to pick up some shares at around one. Profit margin, not the best at 9.12. Again, this is the profit margin, not the gross margin. Profit margin is not the best, but again, this is the sort of toughest time of the cycle for the company. And I think that moving forward, profit margins will improve. And so this is something that it is quite interesting for me. Even if I don't pull the trigger on Enphase, there are a lot of similar companies that I think have been impacted by the same influences that have influenced Enphase, and that may be really attractive pickups at this time. All right, so wa alaikum salam, facts and beyond. As that says, if I win a prop firm and they give me a funded account. By the way, like the video, like the live. If you haven't liked already, thank you. Let's get every live to at least 100 likes. That would be really awesome. Thank you. And the interest will be paid by the prop firm owner as the profit. So I think margin, and I know that interest is haram. So I would avoid that, Brother Azad. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Rakaan. Betting odds are giving a much higher chance of winning for Trump than the polls suggest. Which one of the two do you rely on more? Well, wa alaikum salam, Hannibal. I think betting odds are more reliable because there's money behind it. Polls often, skew in one way or another depending on how the questions have been asked. And there's a lot of, shenanigans that sometimes go into polls. And I also think that there's something here with regards to, okay, if let's say the polls are suggesting the the split between Trump and Harris are 55, uh, 55, 45. Does that translate into a probability of 55-45 for a win for Trump? I'm not sure that that's like one to one. So, if I'm certain that the polls are showing 55-45, I'm certain that these are the results of these results are reliable. Then do I think that there's a 55% chance that Trump wins, or is it a higher percentage than that? So I hope that makes sense, because Trump, all he needs is, to win the electoral vote. And so, one one vote that gives him the electoral vote makes him the winner. So if I'm certain that he has that vote, even if it's, just a few votes more than Harris, if I'm certain of that, then the probability of him winning may be a lot more than just, the percentage lead that he has over Harris. And so I think that's reflecting itself somewhat in the betting odds. Ahmed Bashir says Nano is greater than Oklo. Um, I haven't looked at Nano. I'm interested in looking at it. The issue of these nuclear reactors and nuclear companies, the issue about them is that they still have years to go online, and so let alone be profitable. So this is, years in the making, and I don't know how the stock is going to perform between now and when they actually go online and start earning a profit. And maybe, you know United States citizens in their majority don't want to have nuclear reactors anywhere near their city, even if, the science tells them that it's safe, even if, there are, some incentives that are given. Despite all this, maybe the US population just doesn't want n- nuclear reactors anywhere near their city, and they can't get the permits they need, they can't get the regulatory approvals they need. So there's a lot of questions here. I do think the technology works, it's being tried in other places. China is operating some and building, I think total number is 300. So I think the technology works. I think it makes sense. I think that the energy needs of the future are going to far exceed the energy produced today. And so a build out of this infrastructure using different solutions is going to be needed. So I understand all of that, but there's just a lot of question marks around regulatory approval, timelines, profitability, that makes investing not really easy. And I I always say, the first rule of investing, don't lose money. That's the first rule of investing. And so when you're investing in a company like an Oklo and there's no revenue there, it's very hard to see, okay, well, this is the floor on the investment. In my view, this is money that I can put and basically feel safe that I'm not going to lose. It's very hard to do that when you're dealing with a pre-revenue company. So that's why I've stayed away. And I think I'm wiser than to see a stock go up and say, "Oh no, I should have invested," because that's really not the right takeaway. When you see a stock go up, that doesn't mean you should have invested. It's very possible that you made the right decision based on the information that you had at the time. It's like, give you an example, playing Russian roulette. Playing Russian roulette, where, there's one bullet in a revolver and they spin the revolver, and, if the bullet shoots, then basically you're dead. If it doesn't shoot, well, you win money. Well, playing that is a stupid idea. Now, if it turns out that the chamber that was going to be fired did not have a bullet, does that change the nature of the decision that you made if you decided not to play it? No, you made the right decision. Whether the bullet fires or not is completely irrelevant to the decision you made at the time. It's the same for stocks. You make a decision based on the cost of being wrong and the upside of being right, and then the probabilities for each, and then what the actual outcome turns out to be does not impact the quality and the accuracy of the decision you made based on the information you had at the time. So that's something that I remind myself of all the time, and I hope is food for thought for you as well. Salam Rakaan. Walaikum salam Rashad. Should I be thinking about beginning of 2025 and if there is a pullback after upcoming events, or am I overthinking it? Should I be thinking about beginning of 2025? I'm not sure what the question was, Rashad, but I think that I think that we will end the year with a strong rally, inshallah. That's what I think. Um, Salam, do you think I should buy calls for IAG for end of the year? I stay away from calls, brother. Zakir says, Assalamu alaikum, thoughts on Flux. Perhaps we'll do a deep dive on it, inshallah. Brother Ahmed Bashir says, be careful. Okay. What's your criteria for debt financing, burden coverage? Well, I try for interest income and interest expense um, not to exceed 2.5%, and that's based on the zakat being 2.5%. So I try for interest income and interest expense um, to be below that percentage in order to say, okay, this is a margin of error that's acceptable for me or not. Sheikh Adnan, Assalamu alaikum. Nice to see you, Sheikh Adnan. Wa alaikum salam. Midas asks, what's been your biggest investing mistake so far? Well, I've made a lot of mistakes, to be honest. I think my biggest mistakes have been errors of omission as opposed to errors of commission. So things that, and I say this fully understanding that hindsight is 2020, but many times there are things that I identified as good opportunities, but for whatever reason I didn't pull the trigger on them. And so that's been sort of the general nature of the mistakes that I've made. Alhamdulillah, for the most part, I think my picks have been quite good. What's the maximum you think PLL could reach and when? It's hard to say because PLL is being distorted by shorts. So it's being shorts on the upside are distorting it, on the downside are distorting it. It's tough. Which creates a lot of opportunities because on the upside you get more upside, so profit taking opportunities, and on the downside you get more downside, so there's a lot of buying opportunities. Dr. Boss, wa alaikum salam, nice to see you. Is the consolidation rush by large institutions and companies to hoard BTC affecting the price? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It does. I think there is a rush to hoard BTC, and we're seeing that in the BTC ETF volumes and the amount of assets under management they're getting. So I really think that BTC has a really strong pump waiting for it. Well, thanks, Bashir, and thanks. I'm not sure how to pronounce that name, but YAE. Thanks for your question. I hope I answered it. Abdullah asks, is it just interest that should apply the 2.5%, or is it all haram income? No, it's all haram income that you should apply that to. Um, yeah, you should call me Ramadan because I'm fasting from losses. Yeah, I like that. What's the best source for tracking lithium prices? Well, I think if you want to track the lithium, um, lithium sort of industry in general, I think the lit ETF is a good source. The other source is trading economics. So let's see if I can. Oh, sorry. I opened. Let me see here if I can get it for you guys. So tradingeconomics.com. If you go to, let's see here. And if you go to commodities and more and scroll down, sorry, apologies for your eyes trying to follow along here. I'll try to I'll try to move slower. There it is, lithium. So right here. And again, if you can't see it, it's trading economics. If you just Google it, you'll find it. So right here, you can see how it's been doing. So weekly, it's down close to 5%. Year to date, it's down 25%. So not a strong year for lithium. But I do think that the price will recover in this fourth quarter, inshallah. All right, guys, leave a like if you haven't liked already, and become a PIF member if you aren't already to follow our portfolio. Until next time, make sure to take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.